Welcome to NFT Sundays, a weekly conversation around art and technology, brought to you by DMINTI and the Museum of Crypto Art. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back with NFT Sundays and the lovely, as always, Paula Fernandez, currently building JPEG. Welcome, Maria.
Hello, thank you for having me. Very exciting to be in touch with you again, Colborn. And yeah, super excited and curious to see how this turns out.
Thank you. You know, I always love when we come together. There is always a bit of magic in these moments. So hopefully we can kind of share those personal conversations that we've been having with a larger audience. I wanted to just start and ask you if you'd please share a bit about your background and what brought you into the NFT space and a bit about what you're doing now.
Sure. So I started with NFTs actually in 2018. Super early. I've been working in blockchain since 2017, actually, but building a blockchain infrastructure. You know, I've been employee number 3 at Polkadot. Then I fell in love with the Ethereum community and I started working in Golem. And when I started working in Golem, I ended up in Tokyo. I'm telling this story because it's actually how I came across NFTs. So I was in Tokyo giving grants via an Ethereum Community Fund. That was called actually Ethereum Community Fund. And in the hallways of the Intercontinental Tokyo, the same one that they shot Lost in Tokyo, I find this bearded guy. No, it wasn't Colborn. It was actually Matt Condon. And I was like, what up? You know, you're one of the grantees. Congratulations. And I'm like, what's about your grant? Because, you know, at the time I only knew about infrastructure. And I thought, you know, that's, you know, the thing that I love. And I actually continue to love working on infrastructure. And he told me, this is all about NFTs. He was building very early stuff on NFTs and researching a lot. And that's when it clicked to me, actually, you know, at 7 a.m. At the Tokyo Intercontinental, or I don't know which is the name, but it's a beautiful hotel. Because, you know, I moved to Berlin, and yeah, that's also something about me. I've been living in Berlin for 9 years. I moved to Berlin because I wanted not only, a better living for myself since I'm Argentinian, but also a really rich cultural landscape where you don't need much money to participate in. And when I hear about NFTs, it totally clicked because, you know, it was sort of, you know, the world that I was working in, so blockchain and art, and they were converging at that moment. And I thought it was the most interesting thing in the world. And I was right, I think. You know, I started digging deeper, and in September 2018, I also helped Matt and very early NFT pioneers, including Billy Rennekamp from Clover's network and a bunch of others, create their one of the first NFT conferences where Song a Day actually made a song about NFTs. And from there on, I tried to participate on as many conversations. I tried to learn as much as possible. I have a nonprofit here in Berlin, the Department of Decentralization, or DoD, through which I do hackathons and cultural events. So I've always been trying to integrate NFTs into our practice. So in April 2019, I published alongside Stina Gustafsson and Fanny Lacouvet the first sort of academic paper on blockchain art, covering very lightly NFTs. And then from there, I went on to publish a second one. This was between 2020 and 2021. And I was having a lot of trouble updating it. And I was like, what's happening? You know, like, I don't get it. Like, why are all these people now talking about NFTs? And right when, you know, I was trying to update this, and it was so hard to update it that the process took about 7 months after we finished the paper. It was when I was like, okay, you know, actually, NFTs have finally picked up steam, and I better do something about my knowledge. So that's when I started looking into, you know, which kind of businesses could add value to the space and could focus on long-term thinking and building valuable infrastructure and things that artists would find useful, and obviously the adjacent community as well. Through Twitter DMs, because I was still in the middle of lockdown here in Berlin, I met Trent, the co-founder of JPEG, and Sam, the other co-founder, and we immediately clicked and started building.
There's a lot I want to unpack there, but I have to first ask you, tell us please what JPEG does.
So JPEG is essentially, at the moment, it's a platform through which everyone and anyone can create their NFTs exhibitions. The cool thing is that it's not based on your wallet. You can choose any NFT within the Ethereum ecosystem at the moment. Maybe later we expand to other ecosystems. There's very exciting things going on Tezos and others. And you can create your galleries. And we also launched just on Monday the possibility to also sell via plugging into Zora. Not only people can create their galleries because they're interested, because they want to pay tribute to an artist, because they want to archive a particular moment in the history of NFTs, but also artists can set up their own storefronts, and galleries can create the digital version of their IRL shows, for example.
Yeah, as somebody, like in this museum, right? And in the context of this, there is a constant struggle to me in deciding what does it mean to curate? What does it mean to give people the power to curate? And why is it so important in this space when the speed of digital creation is so rapid and it's so responsive very much to the moment? There is, in my opinion, such a need for this technology, and there's a tremendous gap that needs to be filled by people that are taking the artworks out, putting them together, explaining context in depth. I think what you are working on is incredibly prescient, and it's something that everybody is asking for, right? Because a lot of people do not know where to go. The marketplaces feel overwhelming. They cannot understand this. They need more context and story. Why do you feel that this is important for the space?
I feel it's important because of many reasons. The first one, of course, in the light of the oversupply and, the erasure of the scarcity that once NFT were actually, trying to propose, it's important for us to have better tools for discovery. And the better tools for discovery, of course, have to be in the fashion of actually the environment that we're in, that it's, the Web3 ecosystem. People go build their galleries, and that those galleries create an interest graph that helps with, discovery. In the future, obviously, we will add also data initiatives so people can index all the NFTs out there better. And we will begin to see gradually that because of things like the community efforts of Mocha and, the different community bubbles happening on JPEG and whatnot, we will start to see a more form industry. NFTs, whether we like it or not, right now are an industry that, it's amassing billions. So there is absolutely no justification for the chaos that, is right now happening. So, if we want to really professionalize this industry and, get credibility and build for the future, have better tools for archiving, discovery, then, we have to actually focus on curation.
And look, it's exceptionally chaotic right now. There was a moment in time where art stood alone and it led the space, and, it was a hallmark of what it was. I think since then it's been diluting. Right. And I think there are people trying to step up and kind of professionalize and present the art and the artists and the intention very thoughtfully of who we are as a crypto culture. So maybe you can rewind us to the beginning and what inspired you about this culture that made you kind of understand NFTs as a visual language to express this?
So the first thing that inspired me was actually the possibility to improve the problems with provenance. in the traditional art space. I've always been interested in, forgery and how provenance works. For anyone that doesn't know how it works like this. Someone has a picture of something, and they say, yep, this is Da Vinci. Why? Because, a friend told me, and, this happened obviously, like many years ago. And then there's museums that say, yeah, I think this is Da Vinci. And then there's, a collector that comes and says, yeah, it's Da Vinci. But then, and obviously, now there's different procedures where you can check the pigments and, the style, that will certify all of these, but it's never perfect.
And you're right, it solves that.
Yeah, also not fully, because, we need to build like the infrastructure that supports the storage of the assets. For example, in NFTs, the provenance question is a little bit murky, or, in the example of some of the systems were really early, so they didn't really think of, how to attribute correctly to artists. We have immutable and completely traceable systems. So, we should use them, and, all of the rest are using them. That's what brought me into NFTs. And then, of course, I discovered also that there were artists that were using blockchain as a medium. And that was, even more fascinating to me, because, to be able to use a technology like you would use pencil, that's, sort of amazing. And, smart contracts are incredibly versatile, programmable. And, I got very into artists that use instructions, paper instructions, and try to conceptualize that and see what would have happened if that artist would have done, smart contracts instead of, paper instructions. And sort of that's where it all clicked for me.
Yeah, I mean, do we want to maybe talk about a couple of those early projects? Kevin Abosch's bank book with the keys inside of it, like Rhea Meyer's My Soul, Nilly Coins, the experiments on Counterparty. Like there's a very rich history of not just NFT for NFT's sake, but of experimenting on the blockchain and doing different things, conceptual artworks with tokens or with printed documents that just like relate and connect with the medium. All to say, it's not like particularly a new art practice because of NFTs. There were people examining and looking at it prior to like the development of a token standard.
Absolutely. For example, now that I'm trying to study more about net art, I've been really in love with a project that uses eBay as a part of the infrastructure for that particular project. And they use eBay actually, so the artist would, auction on eBay and, on a particular period of time. And then all the pieces combined would make a gallery. It was by Maria Laura Giardini. I think it was Exchange, the name. And so, the use of different platforms as a medium is obviously not new. Integrating technology into the artistic production is very important, because it's the way that we have to sort of explain how technology affects our society. So, I think the use of, something as programmable and as immutable as a smart contract speaks as well of, a world where, nothing is immutable. The very early projects, actually, when the NFT token standard didn't exist, used ERC20. Mitchell Chan used ERC20, and then later, actually, NFT the certificates. And, we have also Jonas Lund, who issued a token for his artistic practice. So every time someone would purchase a piece, they would also get a token. And, it could have been a physical piece, or right now he's launching NFTs and still giving tokens. And then you can just vote on his practice and, decide what he's going to do with an exhibition or so. Kevin Abosch as well, I am a coin. He minted coins of his own blood. And all of this was done, on ERC20, while, of course, there were efforts as well on creating, immutable provenance. And that came first, then, the art, and also, using the concept of smart contracts to create art, like Rhea did before. So, there's many ways that you can actually use the technology. It doesn't have to be NFTs, and they're all really fascinating.
I agree with that. And I want to go back to something that you touched on, because we have one of the original Xcopy pieces from rareart.io in which, the IPFS link died, right? So the artwork is no longer connected to that token. We're in possession of the token. We have a copy of the artwork, but it is no longer attached. I want to maybe talk to you and investigate that part of it as well. What is that relationship to you? In this case, what is the value of the token? What is the value of the artwork? What should be the proper interplay between those? Almost like a best practice question from your eye.
From my perspective, they're tied. There's no way that the both things can be separated. The same happened to me actually, but in the other way. So I lost the token because it was on a very rudimentary sort of internal wallet for a project. And I have the artwork. It's interesting. And, now that this happened to me as well, and I don't have the certificate of authenticity, of course, I can just tell the artist, hey, he knows that I had that problem as well.
Yeah.
So, but there's no way to separate them, Of course, I have a beautiful digital art piece that I can display in an even more beautiful screen, and it will look stunning, but it's an incomplete artwork. Some people say that, NFTs are certificates of authenticity. I've seen the people that are commercializing the souvenirs for the British Museum say buy the certificate of authenticity. But I don't think that's it, actually. The good thing is that, opinions are free and approaches can be manifold. So, we can have it both. Of course, we should also build our own standards and say, this is actually what, the canon that we're trying to build says it's art. And, if the MoMA does that, then why can't we do it as well?
I want to shift gears a bit here and begin to talk about Berlin as a city. And then I also kind of want to ask you about Argentina and the creativity that's happening there, because I think that's an incredible crypto art moment. All of our developers are in Berlin as well. This is a city I've never been to. I am dying to go and meet everybody and be there, because it seems also that the lifeblood of the Ethereum community is in this city. So will you just kind of talk about this, why Berlin and what this culture is that kind of feeds this appreciation for the art?
So, as many might know, of course, Berlin was a city that was destroyed until very recently, because it got wiped by the war, by the World War II. The city was completely divided. It was into pieces, and after the fall of the wall, the city continued to be, shattered. But the really great thing was that because it was the cheapest, and it's still the cheapest city in Germany, amazing musicians and amazing artists from all over the world, including, the artist David Bowie, started to migrate to Berlin and started building an amazing and, probably the best cultural scene in Europe in our time. So, everything was happening here. They didn't need that much money. It was a largely lawless city as well. And, everything was possible. So, from taking over a World War II bunker to create a club to, live with very little money, you could do it for years and years and years. And later, when Berlin started to build itself, we had startups and we had a lot of things going on. Culture, and more specifically nightlife, continued to be, the main drivers for people to come to Berlin. This obviously cemented the appreciation of culture in Berlin. So, it's a city that thrived only on culture. And then people got attracted by it, by culture. And, they even use art, the street arts and the clubs as, marketing tactics. So, it's still really present, even if, right now we have a fully built city, rent is expensive and whatnot. It's still like that. And with regards to crypto, Berlin is also very anti-establishment. We have a lot of people that hate Google. We have a lot of hacker culture as well. We have hacker spaces. The biggest hacker conference actually happens in Germany, in Leipzig. And Berlin has a lot of, alternative culture in this regard as well. So the first paid in Bitcoin bar was actually in Berlin. It was called Room 77, and now it closed. And I think the story goes like, Gavin was coming to Berlin and he fell in love with the city. He thought that everything was fantastic here. At the time they were forming the Ethereum Foundation. So, they proposed to set up the European, the DevUG here to host all the developers. Because, while the foundation is set up in Zug, Switzerland, no one can afford living in Switzerland, but everyone, can afford living in Berlin with a developer salary, of course. Both cultures have, tech and art are very tied together now. And, even in our ETHBerlin festivals, we always try to capture both things. So, people would come to Berlin attracted by the full package, not only, by, having, this mythical story of Ethereum.
Crypto is very work hard, play hard, right? And like fast rewards lead to like a fast release. And it's just like a beautiful, dynamic, ever-changing city. We see this movement to like more of a digital nomad lifestyle. And it's such a focal point that draws like a lot of Europe. And I think we're seeing more of these from like Berlin to Lisbon, New York. Like we're seeing these Web3 hubs emerge where the lifestyle and culture of the community is being like adapted and reworked to fit these more wild and free cities. And can we talk about like the tie into Argentina? Just because I just did I just did an episode with the head of the Argentina. It's about 200 artists that have come together and have adopted more of a community-oriented approach to their art. And I see the same spirit. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that you see in that culture that you'd like to share.
I left Argentina 9 years ago because I couldn't handle the mismanagement and the lack of access and possibilities that we had. And, I was quite young and I didn't want my future to be, bound by debt and inflation like my parents. My generation, and the ones that didn't have the choice to actually leave or didn't want to leave are turning into crypto because crypto offers the unparalleled advantage of not needing to fear that your assets will be worth nothing with the next political downturn. Argentina has been in a crisis for the past 100 years. So, and, we have had periods of horrible hyperinflation. Right now, inflation is very, very high, but it's not hyper. So, you can go to sleep knowing that, diapers will be worth the same in the morning, but it's very hard to cope with all of these. It's very hard to see how everything changes all the time and there's never a sense of stability. And you have no agency over this. There's nothing you can do. It doesn't matter how hard you work. Back then I was working 14 hours a day in a US-based company. I had a really good job and my salary was worth nothing. In a climate of such uncertainty, you need alternatives and, you're pushed towards alternatives. I noticed that a lot of the names from developers that I was interacting with or that I saw on GitHub were actually like sort of Argentinian style names. So I was like, this is interesting, And I started talking with them and I even went to Buenos Aires on an Ethereum conference. And I noticed, the community is vibrant. All of these guys were using Bitcoin from very early. They trust that, at least with this particular, realm and industry, we have agency, We can change what we don't want, We can work very hard and get somewhere. That core assumption is already really important. It doesn't matter if, they are coders or they're decentralized financiers or if they're artists. We all crave stability and agency to grow.
it just goes back to the like fundamental idea that code is law, right? And it can entrust and know what the Bitcoin programming is going to do with the inflation schedule, right? That there are only 21 million Bitcoin, right? That this is going to be something that will sit. And while it might be volatile, up and down swings through the market, like over the long term, it is a better alternative to fiat currency, or the fact that you could wake up in the morning and just be crushed by inflation. I heard that story so much from the artists, and it's so interesting to see that like subject and thematic for most of them is like body, shape, identity, chaos, surrealism, like very Dali-esque, because I think it speaks to like the fear, frustration, and anxiety of this shifting landscape. And crypto really is a lifeline that brings them into this world. And I think just like some of the best, most innovative art is coming out of Buenos Aires in Argentina. And I would encourage everybody to, go look at the work of Frenetic Void and Milton Sands, Crypto Baby Vixen. And maybe this is a good segue because they're also working on this wonderful satirical profile picture project called Game Disease. And I don't know if you're familiar with it, but I love the creativity and like the poking fun at profile picture projects through like their creation of a game of like broken astronaut helmets and clown noses and rats that like scurry around, and all kind of like the frenetic behavior, degenerate nature of these markets.
There's a really good political parallelism to Argentina in that. During the 90s, we had a period of artificial overabundance. How did this happen? Well, we had like very incompetent government, as always, of course. But this time they decided to sell everything that was owned by the government, trains, electricity, gas, like absolutely everything. And they decided to sell it and privatize it. And then what we had was, like maybe, 4 years of like extreme overabundance in which people got so ridiculous. We would go to Miami and buy multiple TVs and, do all of the things that don't make sense in a period where, you're under the assumption that you are rich and that you have possibilities, So this gesture that they're doing, even if I haven't checked the PFPs, but I already know, what their thematic is.
Yeah. And it's nice because I think a lot of people, they get pulled into the casino and they get pulled into this fast life and they don't understand. It's like people that walk into a casino generally for the first time, they lose all their money. But I think there is a practicality and awareness from just like the extremes of life in a place like Argentina, which lends a sensibility and perspective that is very insightful and is very prescient about like where we're going, how we're evolving, how we're augmenting with the digital. And like it is very, for me, like edge of the world, and they can just kind of see and peer into the future a little bit further.
Absolutely. We know we're overabundance and artificial, abundance in the end. It's very, and this is something that worries me. And of course, I'm sure it worries you as well. This, like right now, it seems like an infinite printing machine.
Yeah.
But, we've seen it also, with the 2008 financial crash, There's after you print and synthesize, and
I see so many parallels to 2017 and the ICO boom, right? Where there were people in the beginning who had wonderful ideas, who were working very diligently. And then it was just like copycat after copycat after copycat. ICO drops would be sold out because bots would take everything up. They'd like get it into an exchange. They would pump it, they would dump it. And here we are again, like the profile, the quality has exceptionally deteriorated. Like more bigger brands have come in. They've spent the entire budget on marketing, right? They just like buy Twitter followers, do giveaways, drive attention and eyeballs, get everybody, really just put it into bots, and then real people have to buy on secondary, and then it just crashes.
It's really crazy. With the ICO fever, it was also, like completely made up business ideas that held no water. People were buying everything. They thought that they were going to strike gold.
Utility.
Yes. Or like now, apparently utility is like a hot selling point for NFTs. But, after the ICO crash, after the .com crash, actually came, relatively good things. We experienced a time of, great technological growth. After the .com crash, some things not very good, like Facebook, that actually destroyed society. But, economically did well. And, and then, after the ICO crash, what we got was more regulations. So there's not such a lawlessness environment.
Yep.
In spite of, having a crypto anarchist heart, I welcome, because I think that helps us, professionalize.
Yep.
And of course, we experienced a great bear market where NFTs were born. And we were able to, solidify our ideas and what we were building and why we were building, and if it was worth to stay in the industry. And that also really worked.
Yeah, and let's turn the attention there and kind of close it on some very positive things, and the things that we think are going to kind of carry this industry forward into the future. For one, I very much believe and respect and want all artists to have 10% royalties on secondary sales. That is a fundamental shift. There is certainly a disintermediation of galleries, middle people, whereby the artist is connecting with their collectors, right? Having a bond and receiving more of the lion's share of the value for their artwork. So maybe you just want to explain some of these things that you think will survive what I'm sure is an inevitable bear market as these things go, and we'll begin to kind of pave that foundation for a brighter NFT future.
Definitely royalties, as you say, is, right now the most important, piece of the puzzle that will continue to solidify. And, not only the way that, we do secondary, but also this is helping as well the traditional art market realize that, the 50-50 splits that they used to do with artists probably will no longer work. And they really will need to rethink all of this, because there's another market that they can tap, and they can, probably own the whole, stake.
Right.
So I think it's important for many reasons, not only for agency on secondary and royalties, but also, thinking how the whole grand scheme works. Obviously, the knowledge about, not only immutable smart contracts, but also resistant storage, and all of the awareness that has been brought up to light, even after, several very helpful rug pulls, scammers actually pulling the digital assets and then replacing it for something else, and ranking a bunch of people that actually created awareness on the fragility of the systems, and made artists think, okay, actually it's important for my audience to know where I'm storing things, because I want to be trustworthy. So that was also incredibly important, as well as, understanding there's value in on-chain as well, not only on-chain programmability that I already have mentioned, but also on-chain storage, and the different ways through which you can also create images on-chain. Yeah. I think this current hype has pushed the envelope on many, many things that are extremely positive. And, hopefully, the problem with oversupply and, the dilution of art through PFPs will be also one of them, because, we will be digitally throwing away so much trash.
I want to just speak to one project on that note, because it reminded me, it was very early on. It was called rugs.wtf. And it was a generative mint where there was a rug in a 3D room. And then one day they literally did a rug pull and all you had left was just the room. And I think like that was very formative and conceptual as to like, what are people buying? What do you own? Like we can change this at any time. And the project from the beginning was kind of like a giant middle finger. It might have been released, I don't know, 9 months to a year ago. And I'm sure it's worth obviously zero right now. But that was just for me like, that was interesting. And I think
that's a way to express also, there was an artist, neither confirmed, it's the name. And they created a drop, they sold it, and then they replaced all the images with pictures of rugs. And then they made a thread saying, actually your infrastructure and the way you're doing things sucks. This is what I did. I actually created a JPEG exhibition on rug pulls, and I included a bunch of them if you're interested.
I want to see that. And I want to shout out one more that I thought was super interesting from Alpha Centauri Kids. It was a 3D video of him in a emergency room where he was like on his deathbed, right? And the collector of that token was given the option to pull the plug on him to make his artwork more valuable or to like let him stay there. The collector paid, they got the video asset, they decided to pull the plug on him, had no idea of the contract. That token immediately sent to the burn address. It was amazing. So maybe that's one to add into the curation.
A modern version of the shreddable Banksy as well.
Exactly.
Actually, I'm gonna add it after we hang up because that's one of the best ones that I've seen. And further cements my thesis that actually rug pulls are conceptual art, and I'm gonna die on that hill.
Well, I'll die with you there, sure. Let everybody know where to find you. You're a wonderful Twitter shit poster. They should follow you.
Sure. So first of all, if you want to know more about my baby JPEG, you can just head over to jpeg.space. You can also join us on Discord. All the links are there. So jpg.space. And we are soon going to open to more people. We have already, we have a form process, but we're going to open the whole protocol for everyone to curate. So you're all super invited. And of course, if you want to see me meme inappropriate things, I also really like doing that. I'm on Twitter at MP. So Maria Paula MP, the real MVP. And I'd be really happy to connect with everyone.
We're going to close it out here. I'm Colborn Bell, Museum of Crypto, Maria Paula, JPEG Space. Thank you to DMINTI for having us and hosting this conversation.
Breaking news.